thank you very much for inviting me to speak. The clock has struck 7 on a glittering Thursday evening in South Tehran. Peyvand is piling crunchy golden rice onto delicate turquoise plates and placing these amidst tiny silver pots of smoked aubergine. His father Riaz is spinning large tuftoon breads, light as paper and rich with saffron, before they find their home in the large clay oven next to the door. A bone china teapot, decorated with stock images of an ancient Persian king, sits on a warm placemat. In the kitchen, Peyvand's mother Shireen is stirring a mixture of crushed ice with skinny vermicelli noodles before flecking it with rosewater droplets and nibbed pistachios. His sister Farzane's son rams a foot-long Kohistan truck into the fireplace, prompting one of the wheels to ricochet off and startle the soft cat on the cream chez long. The 8-year-old boy began to wail, intending to sulk in peace. What did Gorbet do to deserve that? Farzane stubs out a cigarette, too tired to even express full condemnation. Leave him to it. I'm hungry. Peyvand pours from a large jug of frothy yogurt dough, while the rest of the family sits down to dinner. Riaz waxes lyrical about his wife's paintings. Death, destruction, passion, and anger all find their expression in a flurry of cleverly arranged birds, not so much painted to the canvas, but thrown at it with smatterings of thick oil. Guess what? Your mother has been selected to display her last 5 paintings at the Tehran Art Walk. Shireen went blush pink. I got lucky, but yes, I want to see you all there. She looks at her grandson. There will be donuts, Babak, laid out end to end. Jam ones, iced ones, toffee ones. Babak slowly moves out of his gloomy state and eases himself onto one of the light blue chairs. Last 5 paintings, does that include Swallow Valley? How the hell did they allow that? Farzane grinned. Swallow Valley was a depiction of 2 star-crossed swallows, perched between what appeared to be 2 mounds of flesh and a backdrop black as midnight. Nothing too obvious, my dear. Let the smart ones read between the lines. Best way to shake things up, ironically. Peyvand disagreed with this. How could that be the case when other gay men in Iran had to send each other coded messages, or pretend to be transsexual to avoid the inevitable punishments? Or, if convicted of homosexuality, often bundled with other offences in an opportunistic fudge, choose their style of death from the following menu: hanging, stoning, being halved by a sword, or dropped from the highest birch. He recalled the fate of Ayaz Mahani and Mahmoud Askari, an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old who had been caught having sex. They were given 228 lashes for their other convictions of theft, disrupting public order, and public drinking, before they were hanged in Edalat in 2005. Peyvand was convinced that these dreadful outcomes were all exacerbated by a lack of collective courage. So why couldn't more Iranians have the guts to stand shoulder to shoulder with people like him out in the open, rather than sending him private messages of support on Facebook? Gugush, the Iranian pop queen, had just released a music video called Behesht, depicting a lesbian couple who both faced discrimination from their families and strangers. If such a wonderful woman, glowing 40-year reputation and all, was willing to take the resultant flack, what is stopping the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker? That said, it was all right for him in the comparative privilege of the capital, or at least semi-all right. While he was not out to his parents, his sister had broached the subject 5 years ago, after noticing some of his internet search history. Ali Mafi comedy, The Iranian Railroad for Queer Refugees, Frat Boys Go Wild Too. It had all spilled out. His first clandestine relationship with the neighbour's son when they were both 18, the fact that the twin sisters from round the corner were happy for him to see them with uncovered hair because they sensed he was gay, his experiences at underground parties with sensible amounts of bootleg vodka while avoiding secret policemen. Not to mention the political blogs he had anonymously written for, packed with pastoral advice for other young LGBT Iranians. He was keen to stress that his gayness did not mean a radical departure from his sense of self. He was still the same Peyvand, born in 1987, fluent in English and Dutch as well as Farsi, coming to the end of a master's degree in linguistics while doing shifts at a well-heeled coffee shop, passionate about food and tearing up huge chunks of earth in his father's back garden to make way for his favourite black tulips. It had gone down reasonably well with Farzaneh, herself an escapee from a marriage where temporary co-wives were bussed in without so much as a hello, although she was concerned about how he would find a stable relationship with all this covert activity. Peyvand is distracted by a loud buzz from his phone. Party. Tomorrow night at Mehdi's, 8 p.m. Bring a friend. Excusing himself from the table, he curled his top lip. Mehdi Nafisi lived in Isfahan, which was a bit of a pain to get to. He threw a lot of parties, but always forgot to RSVP to other people's. His academic intelligence was sound. He had studied English literature at the University of Tehran. Every time he entered a new relationship, he was in love after roughly 2 weeks. 2 weeks after that, he usually ended up being dumped by the paramour in question. Once he had been dumped by text message just hours after proclaiming total happiness with sound engineer Ali Sattar on his Facebook page. Maybe, just maybe, it was because he heard nothing but rabbits and hearts when Mehdi spoke, despite what was actually said. Or because Mehdi was sending him notes on silver-edged paper in a brown bag every day, slipping in squares of baklava for good measure. The next few hours were whiled away over annotating Steven Pinker's The Blank Slate with a cup of fresh mint tea to hand. Peyvand decided he would go to the party after all. He had worked hard this year and was aiming for top grades. It wouldn't do any harm, and he could catch up with a few old-timers. In bed that night, he reflected on the forthcoming art walk in Tehran. Last year, one of the artists, a 30-something photographer who specialised in candid shots of bathhouses, had been arrested and detained at her home in a suburb of Tehran. The last he'd heard, she had ended up in some dank prison without access to a lawyer, and the authorities had exhibited their typical mix of excessive control without even the faintest nod to transparency. He didn't want his mother to be sucked into the same democratic vortex. For all her faults, constantly intrusive with her family and playing things a bit too safe with the outside world, she had given Peyvand and Farzaneh relative freedom to be themselves. A semi-closeted gay linguist and a divorced feminist chain-smoking mum of one did not exactly constitute a white picket fence vision of what Iranian parents hope for their children. Peyvand did not think of himself as a particularly family-oriented person. He preferred solitude, reflection, and the odd male companion, but there was a comfort in knowing they were there, like the pine trees in Laleh Park, where he sought solace. The Feruze Coffee House was a handsome stuccoed building with walnut slats on either side of the door. Inside, red, rich cushions provided the backdrop to lacy black iron seats. Ancient golden heaters propped up an array of stunning tea and coffee pots. Anyone who walks in is greeted by a table of smiling students. A tall, heavy-set woman in a mustard yellow hijab is talking about fractional differentiation, interspersed with details of a rock concert she will attend that evening. Brazilian, Turkish, Italian coffee, but not Irish or Jamaican, are served with aplomb, dusted with French cocoa through exquisite stencils and tailored to Iranian tastes. Clear bronze streams of tea are poured from a great height into china cups, decorated with a kind of deep blue hue that is rarely seen on teacups outside of Iran. Peyvand has been here since 8 a.m, scrubbing the marbled counters and preparing breakfasts of lavash bread with feta cheese and quince jam for the in and outers. He loves the morning shift on Fridays because it means he always gets to see Mrs. Hashmi, a 66-year-old widow who lives in North Tehran. One tea with rose petals, please, and no cinnamon. Peyvand clubbed the tea diffuser onto a small daisy print pot. The widow sighed and plumped herself onto one of the stools at the bar. After regaling him with complaints about her bad back and what a poor job her daughter-in-law was doing of disciplining Mrs. Hashmi's grandchildren, weren't things difficult for young parents these days, she started to talk about military service. Akbar, my youngest, just finished the draft. It was no different to boot camp, he said. They are all up at 3:30 with a 9:30 bedtime. 20 minutes to shower and dress, and you make your own bed. Lots of gun training, fitness classes, prayers. It's not as bad as you think, she gestured towards Peyvand. This was a tricky topic for Peyvand, and he sucked in his breath. He had avoided military service because he had been in education all these years, but after completing his master's degree, he would have no choice but to embark on it. Gay men were exempt from the Iranian military, but you had to be either a bottom or versatile and willing to subject yourself to the ignominy of physical and mental examinations. A psychiatrist would take it upon themselves to declare you insane. If that wasn't enough, a rectal exam would follow. After all this, many employers would only touch you with the kind of stick that people use to verify the death of harbour rats. He knew people who had gone through it. There was Bijan with the waxed eyebrows, which did not infer queerness in and of themselves, even with the Iranian authorities, and Habib, who passed the test despite a lack of parental intervention. Parents were sometimes drafted in to confirm the sexual orientation of their wayward offspring, but Habib would rather face any punishment from God than come out to any member of his family. This was particularly the case for his father, whom Peyvand had once met on a cold sports day at school. Sigmund Freud would have had a field day with him. Peyvand returned to face Mrs. Hashmi, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. She'd continued to talk while he was lost in thought, pushed into monologue without even realizing it. This was something that seemed to happen to him regularly. I will start soon after my master's is over. Anything that builds that level of discipline has to be a good thing, he opined, convincing nobody, not even Jack, the regular eavesdropper from America who stayed until closing time every day, ostensibly to write a book. Mrs. Hashmi lifted her plump frame from the stool and tucked salt and pepper hairs into a dark grey hijab. I have to go now or I will miss my bus. You are a credit to your parents, Aziza. Take care. The bus from Tehran to Isfahan leaves the average traveller 40,000 rial lighter in pocket and adds 6 hours to one's exhaustion quotient. Not so for Peyvand, who has loved long train journeys since he was a boy. Thumbing through a copy of Topics in Iranian Linguistics, he gets through an entire box of saffron and raisin cookies. Disembarking from the bus at 7 p.m, he spots Dariush, Mehdi's longtime friend and old university classmate, immediately.